You're listening to Empire by Design, episode 82. Hey, I'm Katie White, coach, consultant, transformation facilitator, action taker, empire builder, and this is Empire by Design. In this show, we're building empires, we're sharing stories, and we're getting up close and personal on the strategies that make an empire in today's online world. Get all the show notes, past episodes and more at katiewhite.me. For now, settle in for the ride. Hey Empire Builders, welcome back. In this episode, we are going to dip into a framework that will help you understand your customer better. Forget about customer avatars. Forget about needs, wants, and demographics. This is the only true way to understand things that your customer doesn't even understand about themselves. Let's get into it. Hello, Empire Builders. How are you? It's been a really big week here at Shea Empire. Some big news that I wanted to share with you was that this week I stepped down from leading my biggest Facebook group, the Empire Builders Group. I talked in the group a lot about my decision, but basically the Cliff's Notes version is that for about 3 to 4 months, I'd been struggling with the group. I felt like engagement wasn't quite there, my energy wasn't quite there, and I love the group and I love hanging out in there, but it felt like really hard work. And to be honest, I am, it sort of coincided with the point at which I went back to my day job. And you all know I love and adore my day job. I work in social enterprise, helping socially minded businesses start, grow and thrive. So I went back 3 days a week, which meant that I actually have less than a day a week for my business. And so I have to get really, really, really clear on the things that I'm spending time on and how they contribute to my business. And while there's a real long-term view of that Empire Builders Facebook group, and it definitely would, be a key part of my business at some point in the future and has been in the past, it just wasn't for right now. And so even though it felt hugely risky, I made the announcement that I was going to step down. And the really fabulous thing was that someone in the group, a member of the group who's been in the group for a while, a like-minded soul, he reached out to me and we agreed to hand the admin rights of the group over. So I'm really pleased that I did find such a like-minded soul because she has lots of fresh energy to take over the reins. Her name is Kaylee Price, and she teaches entrepreneurs how to build quality lists and sales funnels to make more money in their business, which, I think we all want that. She's changed the name of the group. It's now called Profit Rocket Entrepreneurs. So if you're not in there already, you can go and search for that in Facebook. And I know that it's going to be lots of fresh fun in there. So I'd love you to support Kaylee. And if you're already in there, stay and, welcome Kaylee. And if you're not in there, feel free to join. So the reason I wanted to tell you was because it took me months to make the decision and I struggled with it for a long time. And now that it's done, it feels so light. All of those things I was worried about that I was giving up, they're kind of not important anymore. And I realize, and I know this, but I still struggle with it, that we struggle more with the indecision than the fallout of making an actual decision. And I know this, yet I continue to struggle with indecision and allowing myself to take a long time to make decisions. Even now, I'm planning or thinking about going to America as a bit of a 40th birthday present because I'm going to be 40 in August, but also to go to the Podcast Movement Conference and, just really expand my networks and skills in the podcasting space and also meet with some people that I really admire in person, like the gorgeous Natalie Ekdahl, who I talk about a lot on this show from the Biz Chicks podcast.
And I am struggling. I'm struggling to make the decision. And I know that what I really need to do is just buy the damn airline ticket and then everything will just kind of fall into place. But I have been struggling with indecision for months now and it's so annoying. I can see that I'm doing it. So a little bit of advice for you all is, if you're struggling with a decision, and particularly in your business, if something you've worked on for a long time, I spent 2 years building that Facebook group. If it's not feeling right for you anymore, but it's really hard to own up to that because of there's like this huge opportunity cost of giving it away. Just do it. Just entertain the thought of doing it and make a decision, whether it's to get rid of it or not, or to change it or whatever. Just make the decision. I promise you, everything will feel so much lighter and the strategy will just fall into place. I promise. So anyway, this means that my main Facebook group that's free is my Podcaster Posse group, which is at bit.ly/pod posse. So come and join there if you haven't already. Now, today's episode, Empire Builders, is brought to you by a new offer. Yay! And that is my Empire Builder Strategy Sessions. This is a 60-minute full service, full value session. What happens is you complete a survey so that I know about your business and your current challenges. We get together and work through 2 to 3 key challenges or blocks in your business strategy. Strategy is my superpower. You will walk away with a clear plan to move forward. I have limited capacity and April is completely full. May is getting close. So book now to secure your spot. This is not only for podcasters. It is for you if you're wanting to build your empire in online business and things just aren't coming together quite the way you planned. Or, we're heading into Q2 of 2017. If you just want a clear 90-day plan so that you know what to focus on and what not to focus on, this is the session for you. So for all the details and to book, go to podcastempires.com/strategy session. And I can't wait to spend an hour with you. Now, let's get into it. So today we are talking about jobs to be done, why understanding your customer is all wrong and what you should do instead. So jobs to be done is a framework or methodology that's been quite hot in the entrepreneur market, but I don't see a lot of people talking about it outside of that very tech entrepreneur space, I suppose. I use it a lot in the work that I do in my day job. And really, it's a methodology that's become key to innovation in products and services. So how we improve what's currently on offer in the market or offer something completely new, and going beyond really what we think that we know about our customers' needs and wants and demographics. And it uses observation and analysis to understand what jobs people hire products and services to do for them, which is a really interesting concept. It's basically saying nobody buys things because of a need or a want, but we at any one time we are hiring a range of products or services to do jobs for us, whether we know about that job or not. And I believe that sometimes we don't even know ourselves what job, a product or service is satisfying for us, which is why asking people directly is not always useful. However, we can observe and understand these jobs through this framework. So the history of the Jobs to be Done framework, it comes from a professor at the Harvard Business School called Clayton Christensen, who's written a number of books. But he co-authored this Jobs to be Done concept in a Sloan Management Review article, and only in 2007, right? So this is fairly, 10 years old, this this kind of, I suppose, way of thinking. And the quote is that most companies segment their markets by customer demographics or product characteristics and differentiate their offerings by adding features and functions. But the consumer has a different view of the marketplace. He or she simply has a job to be done and is seeking to hire the best product or service to do it. It's a really great quote. And I know that many of us get caught in this trap of, the ideal customer avatar and customer demographics, and how do we just add features and benefits to our products and services to stand out from the crowd. So I'm going to read that quote again. Most companies segment their markets by customer demographics or product characteristics and differentiate their offerings by adding features and functions. But the consumer has a different view of the marketplace. He simply has a job to be done and is seeking to hire the best product or service to do it. So let's talk about this framework. What are jobs? So according to this framework, there's two different types of jobs to be done. One is the main jobs to be done, which describe the task that customers want to achieve. And the second type are related jobs to be done, which the customer wants to accomplish in conjunction with the main job to be done. And then within these two types, you can break jobs down to functional jobs, so the practical and objective customer requirements. And these are often the jobs that the customer is much more aware of or much more willing to admit to. And then there's the emotional jobs. So these are the subjective customer requirements that relate to feelings and perception. So a lot of ego is caught up in the emotional jobs. So they're often things that might even be operating on an unconscious level. And we can break those emotional jobs down into personal jobs. So how the customer feels about the solution, or the social, how the customer believes that he or she is perceived by others while using the solution. And, I'm sure that social dimension is really resonating with you as it did with me when I first learned about this framework, because you think about something like a Porsche or a Ferrari, and there's a functional job that is being performed when somebody purchases a car, and that is to drive to get me from A to B. However, the reason that people go into the BMW dealership or the Porsche or the Ferrari and choose to spend, triple the amount of money that they need to satisfy that functional job is because there are personal and social jobs being satisfied, particularly social. Think about, I don't want to stereotype here, but think about that middle-aged dude who buys the BMW because it is telling the world something about him when he drives it. So, these jobs are wrapped up in everything that we do. So another example, which is a little bit more of a simple but really interesting one, and it's quite a famous example, is the McDonald's Thick Shake. So McDonald's found that, their thick shake was very popular with people buying it as a breakfast item, so on their commute to work. And they made a lot of assumptions about the job that thick shake was doing. But then when they actually studied it through the lens of this jobs to be done framework, they found that the thick shake was, the job here wasn't as straightforward as you might think. So they thought that customers were buying this flavoured milkshake because, they had a commute, they wanted something that could fit into the drinks holder in their car and that would fill them up, and something convenient that they could get in a rush from their car on their way to work. But they found that not only was it performing that functional job of a convenient, non-messy nourishment in the morning, but there was also a personal job going on about making the commute more interesting by entertaining themselves with a breakfast that took a while to consume. So that thick shake lasted the whole commute to work and was really almost playing a companion piece and entertaining the driver on that commute. So how interesting is that? And so not something that you would get if you just asked the customer directly, or why are you buying the thick shake? So let's talk about how to apply the framework in our own businesses. So first of all, you need to pick your market of focus and identify the jobs to be done. There's quite a few different ways to identify jobs, but really the main thing is around observation and also studying behavior. So you can study behavior through observing the process at the point of purchase that people take, but you can also do this through interviews, and it's something that I've been doing a lot of over the last few weeks as I'm working on a piece of strategy in the social enterprise sector, and actually studying not only the behaviour around a particular purchase, but also if there's switching behaviour. So if somebody has switched from one product to another in the last 3 to 4 months, that is a really good moment to talk to somebody about what drove the decision. So part of how you can do this, like there's an example, what was the example? There's an example of this, I heard this interview done that was with a woman who had bought a briefcase and they wanted to understand what jobs were being satisfied by this particular briefcase. And so when they interviewed her, they talked about, well, when did you decide that you needed a new briefcase? And the woman said, well, I knew that I was going to like a 4-day leadership conference event in a few months, and I thought to myself, oh, well, my briefcase is pretty old. I was thinking about the things I would need to have ready for that event, and I thought a new briefcase was something that I needed. So very quickly we get to this functional job of just wanting to replace an old briefcase to serve the function of going and walking around a conference and being part of a conference for a number of days. And there was, different layers to that functional job that they understood about the woman not wanting to also have to take a handbag as well as the briefcase. So the briefcase needed to double as a handbag during the day at this event. But then when they went back to, so tell me about the conference, like tell me about when that came about. And what became very clear was the woman had been invited to the conference. It wasn't something that she'd chosen to go to. She had been chosen as part of a select few in her company, which was a real recognition of her leadership potential. And as you dug into that, you realised there was a huge personal and social job going on around this briefcase and around how the woman was perceiving herself at this conference and how she wanted others to perceive her. So as you can see, you really have to kind of dig in to get beyond the layer of what a customer would immediately tell you. And you can do that by going back in time. So tell me about the time that you purchased this product or service, but then when was the first time you really thought that you would need to buy this product or service, and what was going on in your life then? And really having very open-ended interviews to understand more about this. So a few examples to share. So Apple is great, and one that we all know, at providing better solutions to functional jobs. So for example, the iPod really gave us an alternative to the Walkman, but it was better because it enabled you to have all of your music with you at any one time. But then they also added features like having white earphones when everyone else was doing very black, discreet earphones, and different coloured iPods, which meant that Apple honed in on these social jobs of satisfying people's needs to feel different and to stand out, to be cool and to be seen as an early adopter. And so another example of this is like there was basically what you're trying to understand when you do these interviews and study behavior is not only understanding the different jobs to be done, but also understanding how important that job is. So is it a main job or is it a related job? And how satisfied people are with the current solution. So this is really key, because it's no point creating something that, satisfies all these important jobs if people are already very satisfied with what's currently available. So a famous example of this is when the Americans spent millions inventing a pen that could write upside down in space, so didn't need gravity for their astronauts, while the Russians used a pencil. They were satisfied with the current solution being a pencil, so there was no motivation to switch to the pen. And this is something that I think a lot of people forget about. So let's think about how this framework applies in your business. For those of you with products like jewelry or subscription boxes, health and wellness products, what jobs are your products being hired to do? Talk to a customer who's bought your product in the last 3 to 4 months and find out what was going on at the point of purchase before the purchase. Did they did they purchase your product for a particular purpose or event? And really get into understanding that. And this is really similar to the briefcase example that I talked to you about. Is there a purely functional job, or is there a social and personal job going on there as well? My own recent purchase decision was to impulse buy off a Facebook ad, the first time I ever saw the ad, a travel backpack. So I have a looming job to be done. I'm traveling to Vietnam in October, so around 6 months away, and I wanted something functional but fashionable. I didn't want to have to carry a handbag when I'm, going and visiting museums and walking around cities, but I didn't want to look like a backpacker that's been kitted out at Kathmandu. So by understanding that there's this job of upcoming travel, my desire to be safe and functional, but also fashionable, this company were able to target me perfectly with their ad, and I clicked and I bought. And then, so I want you to really think about that and think about how these jobs can come through in your copy or your advertising. For those of you who are selling services, whether they be, in the wellness field, business field, creativity, lifestyle, whatever it is that you're selling, what is your service really being hired to do? Thinking about my own purchase decisions since I went into business, I bought 2 courses. I bought B School and I bought the Institute of Integrative Nutrition's health coaching course. And they really satisfied mostly social jobs for me. Well, the functional job was not even the qualification. It was access to the communities that went with those 2 courses. I wanted to meet the people that did those courses. I wanted to expand my network. And then with B School in particular, this is something that I know suckered me into buying, and I know that it's the reason a lot of people buy, and that's this personal, and there was a personal job around this fear that we're missing out on something because so many people have done B School now, and a social job of what we think others will think about us and our business if we have done B School. So I know that people who haven't done B School often feel a bit uncomfortable, like they've missed something or they're excluded from something. And that is a very powerful personal job that actually has nothing to do with the content of the actual courses. So with my podcasting course, I think a lot about the jobs that people are hiring that course to do. On a functional level, they're hiring the course to fill a knowledge gap, but there are strong social jobs around managing, or personal jobs around managing fear, because there's a whole lot of unknowns, but also this social job and aspirational job around the success of their business and wanting a podcast to be the answer to that. So I challenge you to think about the jobs that your customer is hiring your product or service to do. What is the main job? Is it functional, social, or emotional? What are the related jobs? Is it a job that the customer is aware of? How can you understand those jobs better and also begin to speak to those jobs in your marketing copy? I would love for you to tweet me at Katie T. Wyatt and tell me what job your customer is trying to get done. I hope that you have enjoyed this little foray into a new methodology, which may or may not be new to you, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next week. And happy Easter!
We've loved contributing to your empire building today. Please share us with a fellow empire builder so that we can help them too. Remember, hashtag 100K Empire Army. Thank you to Luke at The Wellness Pro for production and editing, to all of our guests, and to you, our most important empire building listeners. You should also check out my other podcast, hashtag Ladyboss Chats, where Elle Roberts and I chat all things Ladyboss life. You'll feel like you've just pulled up a cozy armchair with your biz bestie. Find us in your favourite podcast app or at theladybossproject.com.